Got breaking news out of Gaza. An airstrike at a hospital has killed at least 19 people, including 4 journalists. That's according to Palestinian health officials.
And a case of rare flesh-eating screwworm parasites has been identified in a person in Maryland. As per sources, the person had traveled to the United States from Guatemala.
Why don't the media do Epstein like they do Diddy? We know why we don't know details about Epstein. Where are the children? Where are their stories? Where are their testimonies? Why don't we have open access to Giselle's testimony?
And authorities are trying to locate a Lancaster man who they are calling a person of interest in the death of his wife, 33-year-old Sheila Cabrera.
This comes as disturbing new video shows him dragging a large object away from their home just one day before her body was found dumped in the Angeles National Forest. Lindsay Pena live in Lancaster with the latest. Lindsay.
Yeah, Micah, this is that apartment complex that the victim lived in with her husband and 3 young sons. Shortly after she was reported missing, a neighbor came forward with video from his doorbell camera that showed the husband dragging a large object through that complex, wrapped in some sort of bag or tarp. Now, we do want to warn you that this video is graphic and some may find it disturbing. Investigators say this is 36-year-old Josimar Cabrera, captured in the early morning hours at an apartment complex in the 500 block of Lancaster Boulevard. His wife, 33-year-old Sheila Cabrera, was last seen, according to friends and family, on August 9th and later reported missing to the sheriff's department on August 12th. Surveillance video shows deputies at the couple's apartment complex, but investigators say when they tried to speak with him, they found out he fled the country, taking his 3 young sons with him to Peru, where the family is originally from. On August 16th, investigators got a tip about something discovered in the Angeles National Forest that turned out to be the body of Sheila Cabrera. Her cause of death hasn't been released yet. That same day, her husband and the 3 boys were located in Peru and the kids taken into protective custody. Family friends say the victim in this case suffered for years from domestic abuse, and they believe her husband killed her after she finally decided to leave. They say she never reported the abuse to authorities because she was an immigrant.
He had it planned. He already had taken the documents from him like the week before. She told one of our friends that he's asking for my stuff. He's asking for my ID, for my social, the kid's birth certificate. Like, why? She told her mom, I don't want to be with him. I want to report him. And that's what, yeah, she was going to do that day. And, maybe that was her mistake to say it, but it's just, it's heartbreaking. It's super heartbreaking.
The Sheriff's Department says they expect the DA to file charges in this case soon, and that would start the extradition process to bring Cabrera back to the United States to face charges for this crime. We are told that a vigil may be planned for tomorrow in front of Lancaster City Hall. Well, of course,
AI for many years secretly is writing news articles with information, with disinformation it's fed. That way you don't have a reporter that can come back later and say, I was told to lie, or you can't even basically expose the person. It's following orders. It doesn't have a conscience.
You walk into this room at your own risk, because it leads to the future. Not a future that will be, but one that might be. This is not a new world. It is simply an extension of what began in the old one.
Hey, I'm Safia, and I'm powered by artificial intelligence. You might be wondering what artificial intelligence can do for you.
Popular news outlet has been publishing AI articles since November, and no one noticed. Most of these articles on BuzzFeed and even CNN and articles over at CNET are written by AI.
And right now, ChatGPT is rattling the AI world, turning out stunningly humanoid writing. Just ask Douglas Rushkoff, a renowned author and professor of media culture.
It is writing better than most of my students write at this point.
How does it work? ChatGPT has been filled, in a sense, with a massive amount of information. Imagine the biggest library you can, then programmed and trained by humans to process and spit it out in conversational phrases. And all that means ChatGPT, or more advanced AI like it, could replace people in all sorts of positions.
This could potentially save time and resources, but it could also lead to a loss of personal connections and a decline in the quality of these types of interactions.
We know that because everything Rushkoff said just there was written by ChatGPT.
So basically you write one article that's 10 pages long, and then it gets recycled into thousands of other articles that are a page, 2, 3 pages long, and the AI just moves them around. And I remember seeing articles I could tell didn't quite make sense and didn't have names on them, or had names that I'd look up that don't exist.
The clear and present danger of disinformation is our conversation here this afternoon. It follows a session just now about disrupting distrust, and of course those are connected, so I hope that's where we can...
They won't ask questions, they will follow criminal orders, and they can have their memories wiped.
What must be what? What must be what? What must be what?
Think about cell phones. Until cell phones and until iPhones and smartphones came out in the last 15 years, I could remember the phone number I had when I was a teenager. I could remember my grandma's phone number. I could remember some of my girlfriend's numbers because I was trained, we were all trained, to commit numbers to memory. So once I dialed a number 2 or 3 times, I could remember that number. You couldn't write it down, but you could just punch it into the phone. It was mental memory, a form of like muscle memory. I mean, go back to skeletons they dig up in ancient Africa, in ancient Europe, in ancient Asia. The people, they estimate, were twice as strong as they are today. And a man from 5,000 years ago in England, or a man from 1,000 years ago in Africa, or a man from 6,000 years ago in the Middle East, was twice as strong as the average man today, just with their genetics.
You are obsolete, Mr. Wordsworth.
A lie. No man is obsolete.
Now we're becoming softer and softer and softer, and the televisions and the dopamine and the smartphones on record have lowered the average human's attention span in the modern world to less than 14 seconds. The attention span of a goldfish is about 16 seconds. So attention span in the modern world to less than 14 seconds. The attention span of a goldfish is about 16 seconds.
Attention all ET, UFO, and UAP enthusiasts, and you naysayers out there. Time to open your mind, or to maybe have it blown, depending on your point of view.
Chief Transportation Correspondent, pilot, and host of the Queen City News Plus original program, We Are Not Alone. May-Kay Beeler is here to introduce us to an acclaimed alien expert who has compiled a field guide to out-of-this-world species you likely never knew existed. Many, apparently, May-Kay, hiding right here in plain sight on Earth, while others are only visible in photographs. May-Kay,
many, apparently, May-Kay, hiding right here plain sight on Earth, while others are only visible in photographs. May-Kay,
what's going on? Are there aliens among us?
All right, this is fascinating. Greys, reptilians, hybrids, and Nordics. Sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, but they are the subject of a best-selling book, The Extraterrestrial Species Almanac. Yeah, written by award-winning filmmaker, author, writer, and producer Craig Campobasso. Now, he's an expert in alien life. He's researched and documented over 82 ET species that he has discovered live in our universe. And he says many here on Earth. Some, he says, are even present in our everyday lives, with many working for the government. His documentary by the same name integrates authentic photos of ET entities, state-of-the-art computer-generated imagery, and art renderings he says portray beings that defy earthly norms. So I sat down with Craig for a conversation in my newest We Are Not Alone episode. Here's a preview, a snippet of what he describes an alien species he ran across in his investigations. Take a listen.
It doesn't look like really anything that we've seen before. Its legs ended where our knees are. And then it had this long torso, long neck, sort of oval-shaped head. And it was wearing goggles and it was holding a light source.
Instead of the bug eyes, it had literally goggles on. Like night vision goggles?
It had goggles. Yeah, they were like, not like our goggles, but they were goggles.
Okay.
It was sent through my friend to the government, and they said that they hadn't seen those beings since 1958.
Now, here's something interesting. Some of the beings he's run across, he can feel an energy, hear a rustling, but can't see anything until he takes photographs, and they show up in the photographs. You got to listen to the episode for the full conversation. It's fascinating.
Well, there you go, McKay. All right, you always got to have an open mind.
That's right.
When you watch and listen to these things, it's what we talk about.
There is no creator with specific intentions for humanity and their behavior. And that's where he really comes. People are free to live as they wish. Nothing in nature has a purpose, and nothing that exists is unnatural. And then he said, therefore, we should celebrate the LGBT community because there's nothing unnatural. In fact, his advice was, he said, we should hack our biology to help us advance. That, in other words, homosexuality, transsexuality, these are all advancements in our evolutionary process, and what we need to do is actively hack ourselves. So it's not suddenly top and bottom surgery to make myself look like a woman, but it's basically a hack. But once you begin to vary from God's truth, you cannot help but begin to amass a huge amount of contradictions in your own mind. And that's why we find we're living in a culture that's so confused about the simple and the most obvious things, who are so easily taken in by sophistry that they don't understand that it doesn't make sense because it doesn't make sense. And the reason the Bible is so powerful and so effective in our life is because it makes sense. It explains why the world is the way it is. It explains why the world is moving in the direction it's moving. But you see, as Paul said to the Romans in Romans 1:22, that they profess themselves to be wise, but they have become fools in the process. But if we begin with the creation, which God creates everything out of nothing, he didn't have to have a primordial ooze to bake or cook or stir in order to get you to come out on the other end. He started with nothing and he just spoke it into existence, which really makes as much sense and maybe more sense than the idea of it simply being baked in a kiddie's oven to produce some kind of primordial thing that looks like you. But the whole point is that the world was composed, he tells us even in this opening statement, of the three things that we very colloquially refer to as the essence of life in this world. We talk about how we have time, we have space, and we have matter. God says in the beginning, that's time. He even tells us that he created the dynamic of time. Then he goes on to tell us that he created matter, the earth, and he created space, the heavens. So that in a very real way, when somebody says, well, I don't believe in that primitive cosmology, what they don't recognize is that there's nothing primitive at all in the way it specs itself.
The attention span of a goldfish is about 16 seconds. So what does it mean when humans are taken out of the equation? Well, it means we become, by action, obsolete.
The narcotics that you call literature, poetry, essays, all of it an opiate. You have nothing but spindly limbs and a dream, and the state has no use for your kind.
What qualifies as hate speech, as illegal hate speech, which you will have soon also in the US. I think that we have a strong reason why we have this in the criminal law. We need the platforms to simply work with the language and to identify such cases. The AI would be too dangerous.
I tell you, I don't care. I'm a human being. I exist. And if I speak one thought aloud, that thought lives, even after I'm shoveled into my grave.
These are the folks that tell you that two men can have a baby. It's all upside down world. They use DNA to prove somebody committed a murder 30 years ago, and that's all scientific. But now the science guy, Bill Nye's new shows tell kids that there are no X and Y chromosomes. They're murdering the truth. They're murdering science. And he sits up there and says, out of tens of thousands of women, nobody's had a miscarriage. Nobody's had a sick baby. That's a damn lie.
I see a vast number of patients a year. I don't know of any other maternal fetal medicine physician in this country that sees as many patients as I do by ultrasound. At one point in time this year, I was on track to see 9,000 high-risk OB ultrasounds. So I know what's going on, and I've seen death and destruction like I've never seen before.
The stillbirth rate is measured in terms of live births per 1,000. And really, it's come down in my career from about 10 to about almost 5.8 or 6. Now, let's go to 2021 and look at the stillbirth rate for Michelle's. This is horrifying. But if you take this death figure and you look at that rate at 29.3, that sigma that you're looking at is 40 plus sigma, standard deviation. Let that sink in.
And what I've seen in my clinical practice has been a substantial, massive increase, unprecedented, in menstrual abnormalities prior to pregnancy, a substantial increase in infertility, a substantial increase in miscarriage, fetal death, and fetal malformation. Published many studies this year, over the last 2 years. Our latest study, which we've used from VAERS and CDC data, and we compared the COVID-19 vaccines over the last 18 months with those of the influenza vaccine in pregnancy. And what we've seen is catastrophic.
China is reportedly developing pregnancy robots. Yes, you heard me right. Complete with artificial wombs to help couples struggling with infertility. This is not science fiction. Billy, this is absolutely wild. Let me read you something from the doctor who's spearheading this technology, Dr. Zhang Quifeng. He said, quote, "The artificial womb technology is already in a mature stage, and now it needs to be implanted in the robot's abdomen so that a real person and the robot can interact to achieve pregnancy, allowing the fetus to grow inside." Billy, what's your reaction?
I mean, this is horrifying on a number of levels. I think, look, there are people who are going to say this is going to help people who can't have children. And I understand and I sympathize with that piece of the puzzle. You're trying to have children. You can't do it. You're looking for a way to have that happen. I think there are so many ethical issues that emerge with this, though. God designed the body in a very particular way, not just the body, but he designed relations between a man and a woman in a particular way. And a baby growing inside, I mean, you have children, I have children, growing inside the womb of a human mother, there's a connection point there that you want to see happen that is not happening in this case. What you have is a machine purportedly, and we have not seen this yet to know that this is actually something that could work, right? They're saying it could work. They're saying it could happen. I think we know that science is moving at such a fast speed that it won't be shocking to see this happen. But the point is, there are severe and massive ethical issues with this. Also keeping in mind the fact that in testing this, you have to assume, outside of all the other issues, that there are going to be losses of human life, because I doubt it's going to work on the first try. So it's a little bit horrifying, honestly.
Well, you know, just when you thought it couldn't get any weirder, past few years it's been kosher to call someone a birthing person, which my wife finds horribly offensive. It's like, I'm a mother. And you guys are taking that away from me. I'm like, okay, let me throw you another one. Pregnancy robots. I wonder how she's going to take that one. But apparently the price is 100,000 yen, which is about $14,000, which, you know, to your point, if, you know, surrogates cost between 100K and 200K, this is a much cheaper option. Now, we've talked about, you know, gender confusion, all that stuff, but now we're talking about non-human relations, humanoid ethics. It's a whole new can of worms. You know, I was thinking like, God, like, you know, what's a Bible verse that I could, you know, use to add to this conversation? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I have to start from square one. Like, okay, robots creating, or at least facilitating, human life. I don't know where that is in scripture. So Billy, maybe in closing, like, how do we even start this conversation from a biblical ethics standpoint?
Yeah, I think we have to start it with prayer and understanding. A lot of times when something isn't going the way we want it to in life, we try to take matters into our own hands.
الآن خليك يا الله، راح الدفاع المدني قتلوا الناس، راح الدفاع المدني قتلوا الناس، استهداف كبير الآن. يعني الآن ترون في الصورة استهداف لمجمع ناصر الطبي، استهداف لمجمع ناصر الطبي بالطائرات الحربية الإسرائيلية. ربما تشاهدون الاستهداف في الطابق الأخير. يعني هذا الاستهداف لمجمع ناصر الطبي في الطابق الأخير. الأحداث والجرائم الإسرائيلية التي تتعرض لها مدينة خان يونس، ومن بينها بالمناسبة يعني وكالة رويتر التي تقف في هذا المكان، وعلى ما يبدو أنها كاميرا بالفعل، أنها هم يبدو أن المستهدفين هم من الزملاء الصحفيين والمصورين الصحفيين الذين يقومون بتوثيق الاعتداءات الإسرائيلية من هذه المنطقة.
Got breaking news out of Gaza. An airstrike at a hospital has killed at least 19 people, including 4 journalists. That's according to Palestinian health officials. One of the journalists killed was a freelancer who had been working for the Associated Press. Al Jazeera and Reuters have also confirmed their journalists and freelancers died in the strike. Israel's defense forces responded to the reports, announcing plans to conduct an initial inquiry as soon as possible. It adds, the IDF regrets any harm to uninvolved individuals and does not target journalists as such. The IDF acts to mitigate harm to uninvolved individuals as much as possible, while maintaining the safety of IDF troops. Jonathan, what more can you add to this?
Yeah, so this is from Reuters just now, a few moments ago. It's a developing story. Things are still fluid, but Reuters also confirms that one of its journalists, a man named Hussam al-Masri, was killed in this strike, but adds this detail. There had been apparently an initial strike at the hospital there, at a hospital in Gaza. Journalists and rescue workers then responded to the scene
to cover it,
to help people, whatever whatever to check the damage, to see what's going on. And then a second strike came. So that's why these rescue workers and journalists were killed, because they were responding to a hospital. Israel hit it again. That's according to Reuters, which said they had a live stream on the hospital that, of course, then went dark when...
Where is it? Oh, there it is. That's creepy.
A social media rumor claiming dozens of kids were kidnapped in Virginia in just 1 week is making its rounds. Tonight, we're setting the record straight.
WDBJ7's Layla Mitchell is joining us live in studio. Layla, I know you've been speaking with Virginia State Police really for the last few days. So what message do they want to get out to people who are watching tonight?
Yeah, Melissa, well, Virginia State Police say that there is no evidence of a mass kidnapper in the Commonwealth at all. And they claim that this has been spreading through viral TikToks and Facebook posts, but police want to debunk it immediately. Go ahead and take a look at your screen. By now, you may have seen these posts and videos warning of a mass kidnapper, and some claiming 50 kids were taken in a week. Virginia State Police tells me that's false. They say in reality, most missing child cases in Virginia are runaways, and most come home quickly. Last week, 88 kids were reported missing to the state clearinghouse, which is in line with Virginia's weekly average of 98 kids so far this year. And state police say only about 4% remain missing long term.
Yes, Layla, seeing those numbers and those kids reported missing in just 1 week, still very concerning. I'm sure parents are a little, alarmed about that.
Definitely, and it is a big number, but it's important to understand the context behind it. The state police say all of those cases are runaways, not abductions, and Virginia reports every missing child case to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which actually makes our numbers look higher than other states. And the vast majority of those kids are found and come home safely within days.
I guess, Layla, the question, how do we know if a missing child is truly in danger or has been abducted?
Yeah, so that's where Cody alerts and Amber alerts come in, and that's how they specify it. A Cody alert is for missing or endangered children, meaning police believe they're in danger, but it's not necessarily a confirmed abduction. Now, an Amber Alert is only issued if law enforcement verifies the child was taken unwillingly and is in imminent danger of serious harm or death. Now, both of these alerts require very specific criteria, and this year we've only seen 25 Cody Alerts in Virginia and 2 Amber Alerts. Now, state police tell us that every child in those alerts has been found safe.
That's good news. So, Layla, what do you say is the bottom line of this information for parents?
The bottom line for parents is don't panic. Don't really believe these videos that you're seeing. Most of these kids do end up coming home safely. It is important to talk to your kids about safety, like not getting into cars with strangers and knowing about how to call 911.
All right, Layla, thank you so much for all this information and debunking all these rumors. Yes. And we do want to remind you, anyone with information on a missing child can contact VSP at the numbers right there on your screen.
What they don't recognize is that there's nothing primitive at all in the way it specs itself. It may not use our learned vocabulary, but the simple fact is it's describing a real place in real time. Additionally, both the book of Genesis and Revelation repeatedly refer to God as the one and the only one, the original cause of everything, the creator of what the Greeks referred to as the cosmos. The cosmos. It's where they get it from the word cosmio, whereas we get our word cosmetic and cosmology. And it literally means to arrange, to adorn, to make orderly, an orderly arrangement or a decoration. In other words, he created a universe that had order and beauty mixed together. And lastly, Paul goes on to remind us in Colossians 1:16 and 17, he says, all things were created through him and for him, and he is before or above all things, and in him all things consist. That basically covers everything. Now, from the most ancient times, men have understood and accepted this is an obvious reality. All they needed to do was look around them and see that the universe or the cosmos is not random and nor is it chaotic, but it's an orderly, sensible, predictable place. It's marked by recognizable things like beauty and governed by natural and consistent laws. Now, it's not coincidental that 1799 or 98 is considered to be the beginning of the modern mind. And the modern mind, or what they call the Enlightenment, was this era in which suddenly they said, we've been governed by life's definition from a biblical point of view, but we're going to now interpret it based solely upon science, of which we know very little. But we're going to base it on that, and if it can't be defined by its material essence, in other words, if you can't touch it, if you can't taste it, you can't feel it, you can't see it, you can't digest it, well then, we don't know that it's real.
A case of rare flesh-eating screwworm parasites has been identified in a person in Maryland. As per sources, the person had traveled to the United States from Guatemala. Now, this person received treatment in Maryland and is the first confirmed case in the US of New World screwworm. The parasite is known to eat cattle and other warm-blooded animals alive. The case comes after an outbreak late last year, which began to escalate and moved northward from Central America and southern Mexico. Beth Thompson, South Dakota's state veterinarian, told Reuters on Sunday that she was notified of the case within the last week by a person with direct knowledge of the Maryland case. According to reports, an executive of the industry group Beef Alliance sent emails to about 24 people in the livestock and beef sectors on the 20th of August. The email had information saying US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention had confirmed a human case of screwworm in Maryland. Maryland state veterinarians learned about the human case during a call last week with the CDC. US Department of Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins and other government officials had earlier this week traveled to Texas to announce these plans to build a sterile fly facility there as part of combat efforts to combat the pest. Screwworms are parasitic flies which lay eggs in wounds on any warm-blooded animal. Once these eggs hatch, hundreds of screwworm larvae use their sharp mouths to burrow through living flesh. The maggots feeding is similar to a screw being driven into the wood, and that's what gives it the name. Screwworms can kill their host if left untreated. Screwworms can be devastating in cattle and wildlife and rarely infest humans, though an infestation is either an animal or a person can be fatal. Treatment is onerous and involves removing hundreds of larvae and thoroughly disinfecting the wounds. But infestations are typically survivable if treated early enough.
What did Alexander Solzhenitsyn say about this? He goes, we know they are lying. They know they are lying. They know we know they are lying. We know they know we know they are lying, but they are still lying.
On July 23rd, 2025, President Trump signed 3 executive orders aimed at solidifying U.S. leadership in artificial intelligence, with one specifically targeting the acceleration of data center construction. The new policy promotes the use of federal lands, including brownfield and superfund sites. Brownfield and superfund sites are basically former industrial sites, generally found in urban areas that are complicated by the potential presence of hazardous substances, pollutants, or contaminants. A $500 billion private sector partnership has already been formed with companies like OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank to construct up to 20 AI data centers across the United States. Meanwhile, Meta has unveiled ambitious plans to build massive AI data centers, including the Hyperion project in Louisiana, projected to scale up to 5 gigawatts of computational power over several years, and the Prometheus cluster in Ohio, set to come online in 2026, with 1 gigawatt and 500,000 GPUs. Additionally, Meta is developing multiple Titan clusters, with each facility's footprint rivaling significant portions of Manhattan. Additionally, data centers use water for cooling servers and other IT equipment to prevent overheating. A hyperscale center can guzzle 3 to 5 million gallons per day. In 2021, data centers collectively consumed 449 million gallons per day, while the rest of America consumed 39 billion gallons per day. So data centers used roughly an additional 1% of water resources. But as small as these numbers are today, the AI data center juggernaut is inevitably barreling headlong into a water-starved future, and the battleground is smack dab in America's driest regions. Out in the Southwest, Arizona's a ticking time bomb. Phoenix and Mesa are drowning in data centers while the Colorado River chokes. Google is already gulping millions of gallons a day, elbowing out farmers and folks just trying to keep their taps running. California's Central Valley and Southern Sprawl are getting hammered too, with new server farms piling onto a state already choked by drought. Then there's Texas. Abilene staring down the barrel of OpenAI's Stargate behemoth, a project set to suck up water in a state where droughts are legendary and farmers are fighting for scraps. Over in Georgia, places like Newton County are already paying the price. Wells running dry, water turning to sludge, and a looming deficit by 2030.
Wells running dry, water turning to sludge, and a looming deficit by 2030.
New fallout this morning for the Trump White House over the Jeffrey Epstein case after the Justice Department released transcripts and audio of its closed-door interview last month with Epstein accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell. The family of one of Epstein's most prominent accusers now outraged, they say, by the DOJ's decision to speak with a convicted sex trafficker who's serving a 20-year sentence. The relatives of Virginia Giuffre, who died by suicide in April, arguing the interview has given Maxwell a platform to rewrite history, calling it a travesty of justice that entirely invalidates the experiences of many brave survivors. Some Democrats argue Maxwell is not credible.
She wants a pardon. She says exactly what her lawyers tell her is going to be necessary to get a pardon. No one should be surprised here.
Maxwell's attorney calling the congressman flat out wrong. Her interview last month conducted by Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, President Trump's former personal lawyer.
By you meeting with us today, we're really just meeting. I'm not promising to do anything.
Maxwell repeatedly denying she'd ever seen President Trump engage in anything inappropriate.
I never witnessed the president in any inappropriate setting in any way. The president was never inappropriate with anybody. In the times that I was with him, he was a gentleman in all respects.
Epstein died by suicide in prison in 2019 while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges during the president's first term. The Justice Department has reaffirmed Epstein was not murdered, though Maxwell said she thinks otherwise, and threw cold water on speculation her former boyfriend maintained a client list. All of it following the DOJ's release of more than 30,000 pages of documents related to Epstein, following a subpoena from the House Oversight Committee, even as top Democrats say the vast majority of the material is already public. The president asked about the file's release Friday.
I'm in support of keeping it totally open. I couldn't care less. You got a lot of people that could be mentioned in those files that don't deserve to be.
DOJ spokesperson says the department will continue to work closely with Congress in the interest of transparency while protecting victims of heinous crimes. Separately, we're also learning about the release of Virginia Giuffre's memoir, set to be released posthumously later this fall. Her publisher says Giuffre called it her heartfelt wish that her words be heard. Maxwell were to receive a pardon at some point. What would that mean for you?
It would unwind everything that my sister and all the survivors fought for. It would be a disgrace of justice. It would be picking abusers over survivors again.
That was Cy Roberts, the brother of Virginia Giuffre, a very prominent accuser of Jeffrey Epstein. You just watched it. You just heard it. You can hear the pain, the victims, their families. They are still enduring from Epstein's crimes. Just moments ago, we got this statement from an attorney for numerous victims and survivors on the release today of the transcripts of Ghislaine Maxwell's interview with Deputy AG Todd Blanche. Quote, Ghislaine Maxwell was federally indicted on 2 perjury counts as a result of her testimony during her civil deposition. Having been convicted of sex trafficking, she is now in jail, presumably hoping that she will receive a pardon from President Trump. I can't imagine that her testimony will be given much weight by anyone with any knowledge whatsoever of her involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. Joining me at the table, former Criminal Division Deputy Chief at SDNY, MSNBC legal analyst and host of the YouTube show Courtside, Christy Greenberg. Amanda Carpenter is also back with us. You know, Christy, the point was made earlier that there is it is clear in her testimony that there is an effort to clear Trump specifically. A lot of the questions are specifically about Trump. A lot of the answers very complimentary, even in particular sections to him.
To clear Trump specifically. A lot of the questions are specifically about Trump. A lot of the answers very complimentary, even in particular sections to.
Why don't the media do Epstein like they do Diddy? We know why we don't know details about Epstein. Where are the children? Where are their stories? Where are their testimonies? Why don't we have open access to Giselle's testimony and her cooperation with the government? You mean because most of the people went to the island with politicians, powerful people. The evil people who can go to an island and have access to children that nobody knows have been kidnapped in the world. And powerful people have access to them. There's a movie that I question to this day. It's called Sounds of Freedom, Cry of Freedom, about human. I cried watching that movie. I kept walking. I said, oh, man. I said, why don't nobody promote this movie from Hollywood? Why don't our government promote this movie? Why do our government spend so much business in Ukraine, and why don't we got some real laws for sexual exploitation and sexual abuse? Could they in on it too? So at the end of that movie, it says that child sex trafficking has surpassed drugs and guns in the world.
Child sex trafficking has surpassed drugs and guns in the world.
So according to Michael Wolff, anywhere from 7 months to a year, whatever he said there, before Trump and Melania got together, Epstein had sex with Melania. So according to Michael Wolff, Melania is Jeffrey Epstein's sloppy seconds. That went to Donald Trump. Oh, that's brutal, bro. Oh, that's the most brutal thing I've ever heard. Now, we already knew that Trump and Epstein shared a girlfriend, but that was in relation to a different woman. But it looks like, now, we don't know what the timeline is or if it overlaps, but it's possible that that also potentially was the case, according to Michael Wolff, with Melania. So if you're keeping score, and I know many of you are, if you're keeping score, Epstein was best friends with Trump for a decade, and he's on literal audio tape saying that directly to Michael Wolff's face. Epstein had Trump on his plane 7 times that we know of. The first time Trump and Melania had sex was on the Lolita Express. Epstein knew the inner workings of Trump's first White House. Trump, of course, according to the Wall Street Journal, wrote that creepy love letter to Epstein on his 50th birthday, where he said, enigmas never age, and we share a lot in common, Jeffrey. Trump offered Epstein a job in his first term as well, according to Epstein's butler, and he went and spoke to, what was it, the Daily Mail, I think, or the Telegraph recently. And the biggest one to me is that, according to Epstein, he learned human trafficking from Trump's modeling agency.
On social media of rabbits with strange growths on their heads.
Yeah, the warts almost look like horns, but Colorado Parks and Wildlife wants people to know that it's not a problem. Now, CPW has noticed this in rabbits north of Fort Collins this summer, and they say what you see here on this rabbit is actually not rare. The growth of warts comes from the papillomavirus and is spread by biting insects that are usually more active in the summer. CPW says that there is no threat of transmission to your pets, but say that you should still be careful.
There's no over concern needed for pet owners. We would just say keep those wildlife principles in mind when you do have your pets out. Keep them on leash, keep them away from wild animals just in case, but it's not necessarily something we see transmitted from rabbits to dogs.
Susan Mansfield said she saw a different bunny with tentacles in her yard in recent years.
He had this same black stuff on him, and I thought he would die off during the winter, but he didn't. He came back a second year, and it grew.
A group of rabbits in northern Colorado are sprouting growths, and it looks like something out of a horror film.
Yeah, scientists say what's happening is actually pretty common. Errol Barnett explains.
Rabbits in Colorado have been infected with a virus that's causing them to sprout what look like tentacles, which causes these wart-like growths to protrude from bunny faces like metastasizing horns. And rabbits with these tendril-like growths have been spotted all around Fort Collins over the past week. And people are calling these poor infected critters Frankenstein bunnies, demon rabbits, and zombie rabbits too. Now, what's interesting is historically, this type of deformation may have contributed to the centuries-old myth of jackalopes, which told of a mysterious rabbit with antlers or horns or other variations. Now, the Shope papillomavirus is mostly harmless. It's common during summer months when fleas and ticks are more active and spread the virus. And get this, the discovery of this disease was actually an important one for science because it led researchers to make the connection that human papillomavirus can cause cancer.
Virginia is currently the king of data centers, with Northern Virginia's server farms multiplying like roaches, draining resources while locals and industries beg for relief. Some outfits are tinkering with air cooling or recycling water, but it's a drop in the bucket against the tidal wave of AI's thirst, set to explode by 2027.
But then there's no lobbying group, no environmental group, no group saying this summer in the real studies by the major 5 power grids that they're all on the verge of collapse just because of AI data centers, including the main East Coast grid, the biggest. But they say global warming, you'll have blackouts, the power is about to go out. But they never say in those articles it's because AI is already slurping up 40% of the power produced in the United States while they shut down the power plants. So you don't get power, but AI gets all the power it ever wants because they're paving the way for it because it will control everything we do, but only the power we give it.
New categorical exclusions under the National Environmental Policy Act and streamlined Clean Water Act permits aim to remove barriers to data center construction, potentially increasing reliance on energy-intensive sources like coal, as outlined in an April 2025 executive order promoting coal infrastructure for AI facilities, a resource that Democrats want to eliminate. The road to AI innovation is now entering a new roller coaster phase. Establishing and maintaining dominance in AI data centers is obviously critical for a country to lead, as AI data centers process vast data sets, train sophisticated models, and drive innovations in fields like healthcare, finance, defense, and manufacturing.
Under the leadership of Administrator Oz, we're officially launching the CMS Digital Health Tech Ecosystem to give healthcare providers, insurers, and software companies the tools they need to empower Americans with a 21st century experience on health.
But the innovation of surveillance and a technocracy lurks within. It is vitally important that Americans continue to be fully aware of any technocratic encroachment on their Bill of Rights.
A federal judge ordered that the notorious alligator Alcatraz be shut down within 60 days. In the meantime, no more detainees can be sent there, and any expansion at the facility must stop. This suit was brought on by environmental groups who argued the construction of the detention facility in the Everglades bypassed environmental laws. In her 82-page ruling, the judge sided with the plaintiffs, saying Florida officials never sufficiently explained why an immigration detention center needed to be located in the middle of sensitive wetlands. Joining us now, Elora Mukherjee, Director of Immigrants' Rights Clinic at Columbia Law School. Elora, always good to have you on with us.
Thank you for having me.
So if this facility is shut down, what happens to all of the people who are inside?
The Department of Homeland Security is going to need to figure out how to transfer the immigrants who are detained at Alligator Alcatraz to other facilities across the country. This will be challenging because immigration detention facilities across the country are already over capacity and are way over capacity in some areas. And this is also a sign to the administration that although Congress has allocated $45 billion for immigration detention in the big beautiful bill, that it might not be as easy as the administration wanted to set up new detention facilities and create additional bed space for detaining and then deporting individuals.
Does it matter that the reason why there was this decision was because of environmental regulations, that the detention facility, this Alligator Alcatraz, did not meet or did not have the, environmental approval in order to build in the Everglades? I believe it was something along those lines, and not about the humane aspect of the actual facility and what is happening to the people inside?
A win is a win. That's what I would
a win is a win, but I wonder, maybe another way of asking is is it a flimsy decision that can ultimately still allow Alligator Alcatraz to exist if they address these environmental regulations?
God had no intention of me being a calm human being when he created me, because if he did, he wouldn't constantly put these trials and tribulations before me. I got a fucking notification talking about guidelines changed on September 13th. All these people on my For You page I didn't fucking ask for, talking about when to post, when not to post, what hashtags. I don't give a fuck about none of that. You think I'm on here right now giving a fuck about my page growing? Bitch, I'm happy it is, but this is a cry for help, nigga. What the fuck? People come up to me in the real world talking about, oh my God, I follow your TikTok, I saw your TikTok, you're thank you for recognizing me, but this isn't creative content to me. This is a fucking panic. Motherfuckers talk about everything else while Donald Trump takes over DC. Federal fucking control. Last year, they campaigned on small government. Yes, I'm yelling. This is fucking serious. They said minimize the federal government so that you, the citizen, have more access to the local and state government without federal intervention. That's what they campaigned on. Fast forward to August 2025, Pam Bondi come out. I sent letters out to 33 different countries, multiple ones went to California. You have no choice to comply with the federal government. That don't sound like minimizing to me, bitch. Why are we waiting until it hits our front door to react? Why is that the trend across Americans? Until it literally hits our front door, we don't do shit but talk about it. I just watched a video of one of them motherfuckers. One of them Trumper motherfuckers, bulletproof vest, weaponized, ready for battle. If it comes to that, telling people on their porch that they can't smoke because Donald Trump is tired of it. We legal in DC, recreational. Cigarettes, obviously, alcohol. So if I'm on my motherfucking porch and I live in DC and it's legal recreationally and I smoke a blunt, you ain't finna come up to me, tell me, put that motherfucker out because Donald Trump is tired. I give a fuck. They make up the laws. Y'all just heard about the motherfucker who threw the sandwich at the police officer and they're charging him with, assault of a police officer? That bitch from Fox News who's in law, whatever the fuck, right? So you throw a sandwich at a cop, they say assault of a police officer. But the January 6th was on video assaulting Capitol Police, all pardoned? And they're the party of law and order? That's because they want to create the laws.
If the borrower is a slave to the lender, and all of us who work for money don't own any money. If we don't own any money, then we're just making it to give it away. So, we really working for free. The same system who created the money gave you a job so you can give it back to them. So if the borrower is a slave to the lender and the borrower or the average worker doesn't own any money for himself, doesn't create any money for himself, then money can never free the slave, because all the money that the slave make is being borrowed just so he can give it back to the same system that he worked for.
Because all the money that the slave make is being borrowed just so he can give it back to the same system that he worked for.
Don't believe that there's anything outside of what our sensory perceptions can experience. And that began the idea of what we call materialism, a materialistic view of the world. They also called it enlightenment and also rationalism. All these different terms that they gave to the idea to really kind of convince you, because if you want to sell something, you have to come, really with a terminology. You have to be a jargon that you use so that other people have to learn your jargon to be able to talk to you. That's called medical school. But the whole, so you have appendages, you don't have toes. And I think that can be really misleading. Because I remember when I went to the doctor and said, well, we're going to need to do a digital exam on your prostate. And I thought, I'm into computers. I have no problem. They didn't tell me that this was a digit. I said, that's not a digit, that's your finger. So deceptive. But basically, Lamarck was arguing that everything that happens gradually. There's a natural, gradual, biological mechanism. And he even went so far to say that apes were mankind's ancient ancestors. Now, what's really interesting to that, if you go to the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C., they'll have a display of the evolution of man. And in that, they'll tell you how the chimpanzees and humans have share 98 to 99% of the same DNA. The problem is that since 2007, they know that's hugely inaccurate. Today, especially when talking about the sexual aspects of a chimpanzee versus American, the difference is 20%. The only place where it's still 1% is in politics.
The only place where it's still 1% is in politics.